Our next grand keynote is Nikesh Arora, CEO and Chairman of Palo Alto Networks. Formerly the Chief Business Officer at Google and President and COO at SoftBank. Nikesh has been at the helm of Palo Alto Networks for 3 years as a leader in network security and now cloud and AI. For the session today, he chose the topic of scaling and transforming companies. As we were discussing who we would like to bring in as a moderator, he suggested why not someone I have worked with. He picked two employees from Palo Alto Networks, Neelima Rustagi and Ankur Shah, who had both come to Palo Alto Networks from companies that Nikesh had acquired. Please join me in welcoming Nikesh Arora, Chairman and CEO of Palo Alto Networks.
Welcome to the grand keynote of TiEcon 2021. This is Ankur, and I'm joined by Neelima. We are fortunate to have with us Nikesh Arora, the Chairman and CEO of Palo Alto Networks. Prior to joining Palo Alto Networks, Nikesh was the President and CEO of SoftBank. He also spent a decade at Google as the Chief Business Officer. Hi, Nikesh. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Ankur. Nice to see you on this platform. Nice to see you, Neelima.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got to be honest, as the employees, this is like interviewing Amitabh Bachchan. So our apologies if we freeze midway through the interview.
I just want to know who you are in that movie.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking the time. I know it's like 4 days to touchdown, end of the quarter. You're juggling multiple priorities, and we certainly appreciate your time. Look, there's a lot to cover today, but we'll focus our conversation on your journey at Google, at Palo Alto Networks, and most importantly, your approach to growing and transforming businesses. So kind of to kick things off, what's been the biggest surprise for you in the last 1 year?
You know, Ankur, the last 1 year has been eventful at best. You know, the world has gone through one of the worst pandemics we've seen in our lifetime, you and I, at least, Neelima. And I think what's been surprising has been the resilience and adaptability of people, to be honest. Like, you know, we were all in the office and we found out that we had to shut the office down. I think we all thought, oh, it was going to be gone for about a week. Should we say 2 weeks? Should we say a month to be conservative? And here we are, you know, 13 months later, we're still working from home. And, you know, we all thought the companies are going to go into disarray, demand was going to go away, the world was going to be in tremendous amounts of chaos. In some parts of the world, unfortunately, still are. But to be honest, the pace of innovation, the pace of technology adoption, the demand for certain goods and services, the adaptability of human beings, how we've all managed our professional and personal life has been phenomenal. And I think in that context, what we've tried to do in our company, as you're well aware of, is we had the luck, perhaps in some degree of foresight, to say, at this time, the most important thing is to reduce uncertainty and anxiety from our employees. And as you know, we in the team have been dedicated towards constantly working at eliminating anxiety, reducing uncertainty, allowing people to flourish in this uncertain environment. And I think that's been the most humbling and the most interesting thing that's happened in the last 1 year.
Yeah, well said. It's been an interesting year, and companies like Palo Alto Networks has done an incredible job of kind of navigating the employees through this. I am so glad you didn't say that fake coin like Dogecoin reaching 40 billion in market cap would be the biggest surprise of the year.
I'm sure Elon Musk is going to do that on Saturday Night Live. I think he's hosting it on Saturday. So.
Exactly, pump and dump.
Nikesh, speaking of something that's grown in market cap significantly, you arrived as CEO of the world's largest cybersecurity company 3 years ago, having no background in either. What experiences and core principles got you here?
Well, Neelima, it's an interesting question. I think there's kind of two sets of answers to that. One is, I've always I literally finished a podcast on managing careers for employees in our company, and I've never tried to manage my career. I've always tried to have fun, try to enjoy what I do, and work around really smart people in a growth environment. I was blessed to do that at Google. I was blessed to do that at SoftBank with a whole bunch of startups, some of whom were in India. And I was really, really blessed to be able to work around that kind of a growth mindset and actually enjoy what I did. So in that context, I wanted to work somewhere where I was going to have fun. It was a growth business. People had a growth mindset. It was a fun place to be in. Palo Alto Networks is definitely all of those and then some. I think the other aspect, which actually helped me a lot over the last 2 years ago, I have a funny story. When my daughter was 12, she was now 23. My father was visiting, who has since passed away with ALS. And I could overhear a conversation in the back where they were saying, she was saying, Grandpa, it's time you learn how to do video chat, because if you video chat, you can see my face. And he's like, listen, I'm old. I don't have any time or desire to go learn something new. You're just going to have to call me the old-fashioned way. And my daughter insisted that if he was not going to learn video chat, how is she going to communicate with him? And I was overhearing this from the other room, and that day, I sort of raised my hand in exhaustion of the number of apps that were out there. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to figure out Twitter. It's yet one more app, social app I have to go figure out. And that was a day after which I made a promise to myself that I was not going to stop learning, and I was never going to have that attitude where I've got it, I know enough. And I set myself a challenge to get a certain number of followers on Twitter because I wanted to learn it. I've always set myself challenges to learn. I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but I came to Palo Alto Networks. I said, I don't know cybersecurity, but I'm sure I can put my head down and learn it. And I have to say the first 6 months, and Ankur is being modest, he was part of our Prisma Cloud team, and you were part of the Demisto team, and we acquired the companies. And you can imagine, you already know the number of questions I would ask, which I'm sure you sat across the table and said, oh my God, we're going to have to educate this guy from scratch. But I have worked tirelessly for the last 2 years to learn the industry, learn trends, learn what the customers want, learn how our products work, learn how competitors' products work. And that's been the most rewarding experience for the last 2 years, is the amount of learning I have been able to have and hopefully contribute in return to the growth of our company.
Yeah. Is that the hunger for continuous learning kind of gave you the confidence that you can actually join a company and disrupt a cybersecurity space with over like 3,000 vendors?
It was an interesting time, Ankur. I was sitting there and saying, this is a $140 billion industry. There is no one company which has more than 2.5% market share. It's one of the few industries in the world which is so fragmented that there is no natural leader. And which is counter to the thesis that in enterprise, scale is important. If you look at the Oracles of the world in the past, IBM, or you look at the Microsofts of the world today, and Google and Amazon building large enterprise businesses, you realize, or Salesforce, you realize enterprise is about scale, because eventually you need a lot of people out there working with every customer, and they need to back the truck up with lots and lots of products. And in cybersecurity, that's not the case. In cybersecurity, almost every company, when I looked at 3 years ago, was, in my mind, relative to those giants, subscale. So I said, there's an opportunity to build a leader, and the leader is about scaling an organization. And in that, you have to have a combination of great products across that customers want. You need large teams out there, and you need the ability to build an operating system that allows you to scale and become as large as some of the large enterprise companies out there. So that was the opportunity I saw, and that's the journey we're all on in terms of trying to get to be the natural leader, where you become the must-have cybersecurity partner for every company out there.
So speaking of scale, one of your core beliefs is that building 10x is easier than building 10%. Can you explain that more?
Well, I have to credit the founder of Google, Larry Page, for that, because that was a belief that was his belief. And if you look at people who've achieved great things, they've had audacious goals. They've tried to reinvent many things or reinvent many large things in the world, and they've applied themselves and tried to get resources, rally resources to make that happen. You've seen that in pretty much most transformational companies out there, whether it's Tesla, whether it's Uber to its credit, whether it's Google, whether it's many of the large companies today we rattle off our mouths, they've all aspired for audacious outcomes. And so when you aspire for an audacious outcome, you get to 3x, you're not perfectly happy, but it's 3 times better than where you were. If you aspire for 10%, you get to 3%, you're not happy at all. So I think it's a lot easier to aspire for something amazing and great and get halfway there and be happy about it than to aspire for incremental change and then be really unhappy, even if you got there, to be honest.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Speaking of building 10x products, You're also known for your brutal product reviews, and we've been victims of a few of those. So a couple of questions for you. Is this something you picked up at Google? Very product-centric organization, obviously. And second thing is that sort of, sometimes to bring the best in people, you got to amp it up. You got to set the bar really high for your employees. How do you get the best out of your teams and maintain that level of intensity?
Well, there's a lot of questions there, Ankur. Sure, you and Neelima are speaking from personal experience, and thanks for washing our laundry at TiEcon. But
we love it, Nikesh.
If you think about it, it was very funny. I had the privilege of running into Peter Drucker once at a conference in Dubai many years ago, and he had those 4P principles, right? Product, promotion, pricing, and positioning. And I sat and I talked to him and I said, "Hey, Peter, what do you think about Google?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "At Google, there's only 1P." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "It's only product. There's no pricing. The product's for everyone. And there's no promotion. The product sells itself because people use it and they want to use it forever." He said, "Yeah." And he kind of like ignored the fact that I had set 3 variables, 3 of his P's to 0, and focused on 1P, which is product. And it's a very fundamental principle. If you believe you can build the best product in the world, then all the other things matter less. And you can play that game whichever way you want. You buy iPhones. If you had sat down and built a plan to go sell tens of millions of iPhones every quarter, you'd say, well, people can't afford it. And how can a person who's got a low disposable income go spend $1,000 to buy a phone? Guess what? I think the amount of iPhones out there in the world will disprove the theory that there's a buying threshold for iPhones from a price perspective. So I think superior products trumped every other P over time. On the contrary, crap products eventually are the downfall of companies. So if you believe that, I think having a great product is fundamental to the existence of a business enterprise. So from that perspective, if we don't strive for excellence in our products, we don't strive for a product which the customer wants, that wows the customer, that the customer consumes and wants more of, we're at the risk of destroying the business. So I think the product manager is the most important people in any company because they are responsible for the entire value chain of the business. And unfortunately, they have to be held to an even higher bar than everybody else, because if one sales guy misses one sale, we've got other salespeople selling to other places. If you miss a product, you've destroyed the entire possibility for that company to excel in their certain space. So I think you've got to hold the product people to a high bar, and you got to push them as much as you can within reason to make sure they're doing their best, because they are effectively the backbone of any company that's out there trying to wow their customers.
So going back to building great products, Nikesh, for building great products, you often have to disrupt yourself or you will get disrupted. And disruption is often very uncomfortable for organizations. What is your advice on striking a balance between staying the course, ramping up, or charting a new one?
Neelima, as you've experienced at our company, we were a phenomenal network security company when I started. And today we have the privilege of being a player in cloud security and autonomous SOCs and data-oriented or machine learning-oriented security, which is more behaviorally oriented. Now, you have a choice. I think disruption, if you don't play the disruption card, you have an existential crisis. You run the risk of obsolescence. So it's not like disruption is a choice. I think disruption is a necessity, especially in an industry where the bad guys are constantly innovating. The bad guy is not sitting down and saying, let me try the same security hack I tried 15 years ago, because by now Ankur and Neelima would have built that solution, so let me go try it again. They're working on stuff you're not working on. They're trying to figure out how to go build a new attack vector or new supply chain attack, as we've seen recently, which nobody's ever thought of, because I'm going to go outfox and outwit the product managers in the cybersecurity industry. So these guys are innovating, and they only have to be right once. We have to be right 100% of the time. So we have to constantly disrupt ourselves, because they're looking to disrupt us. So I think the challenge and the bar in cybersecurity is so much higher than any other industry that I think for us, it's an existential threat, that if you don't disrupt, you die. So I think from that perspective, we've got to accept the challenge that if we work in an innovative industry, whether it's ours or many other industries out there where competitive forces are constantly innovating, you've got to believe that if you're not going to be constantly thinking about how to disrupt yourself, and I think disrupting yourself means doing better every other day, in reinventing it so that the customers have a better outcome, reinventing it so that you're solving a bigger and better problem constantly. You run the risk that somebody's going to come out of left field and disrupt you totally. And sometimes you can try your best and you're doing evolutionary disruption, and then you get revolutionary disruption that comes from the other side. Which is what Apple did to the entire mobile phone industry. They said, we're not going to parlay to every mobile company out there and try and get input from them how to build the next phone. We're just going to build it ourselves, and we'll tell the world this is the best thing they need. Sometimes that happens too, right? So the entire mobile phone industry was evolving to a better state over time, and they came in from left field and disrupted an industry where they had no experience in it. So you've got to constantly look at those examples and see what Tesla, right? They've forced the entire auto industry to start focusing on EVs and making EV their target number one, because they've proven that they can be extremely successful by disrupting what is a traditional industry.
Okay. So that actually is a nice segue into the transformation thing. So in the 3 years, we've become leaders in multiple spaces, Nikesh: cloud security, network security, in the SOC. In hindsight, this now all makes sense. But what were the chess moves along the way?
It's actually interesting, Neelima. What happens is typically, what is that phrase? It says, you underestimate the long term and overestimate the short term.
Yeah.
You get very focused on the short term and you don't pay attention to the long term. So one of the things which we did early, when I sat down with the founder, Nir, and with Lee, our chief product officer, and I said, listen, let's worry about where the world will be 5 years from now. So there's some very interesting principles we came back with. We said the biggest change in our lifetimes that will happen to computing is the cloud, which means we think most companies of small to medium size will actually stop building data centers and start relying primarily on the public cloud and start building their infrastructure there. And if you look, that's kind of true for all the new startups you see in the world. They're pretty much, nobody's out there buying servers, hiring DevOps people, building their multi sort of vendor instances. Everybody's out there in AWS, GCP, Azure. Now, when people go to the cloud, it fundamentally changes the network architecture of enterprises. It changes the security paradigm. You no longer have to worry about infrastructure security. You have to worry about application security and what you're developing. You've got to secure your data from other people who's going to want to come have access to it. And so that was one principle. And he said, if that's true, what also happens if public cloud has to succeed over time, the cost of compute and the cost of storage is going to go down. It's sort of like Moore's law. It'll constantly keep going down, which means it'll be cheaper and cheaper to store data and cheaper to compute and to analyze data. If that's true, then you don't have to push signatures to the edge devices in security, because you can actually start focusing on behavior analytics, which is actually truly the right way to do security, because you got to watch anomalous behavior and say, this is bad behavior, let me shut it down, as opposed to say, oh, this is the ID or this is a signature. So with those two insights, we said, we're going to go big in cloud. We're going to go big in data ingestion analytics and behavior analytics. And what is the impact the cloud is going to have to our network security capabilities? So if you look back in 3 years, it's kind of, in hindsight, is a wonderful thing. Everything looks, like a plan. If you look back what we did, the first acquisition we did actually was Redlock, which was where we said that's a cloud security platform. We had evident we didn't have enough cloud security, and Redlock became the backbone of our cloud platform strategies. Ankur is there, as he's aware, painful. He was part of the Redlock team. He said, what's next? They said container security, and Ankur and team said, we'll build it. We went out and said, in the market, there's 2 people who are 2 years ahead of you. Let's go ingest that, because it's going to take us 2 years to catch up to where they are today, and they'll be 2 years ahead again. So we went and ingested and effectively paid for our lack of innovation over many years in the past by getting up to snuff with innovation. Today, what the innovations we do on the cloud platform are stuff that nobody else is doing out there. In the last 2 years, we had to ingest and pay for technical debt and buy back into our company all the things that people were working on from an innovation perspective. So in hindsight, it looks like this was all working, but the second acquisition, as Neelima, we made was Demisto, which was the SOAR platform. We said, when you collect a lot of data and alerts, you got to do automation. And SOAR is going to become the underpinning of our AI platform, because we're effectively training our data by automation. So, those are the bets we made. And once you make those long-term bets and you start adapting your business towards the long-term bets, many customers out there understand that that's the right strategic direction to go to, and then they become your partners. If you're tactically solving short-term problems, they don't understand where you're going, and that scares them, and hence they go look for, they take the onus of strategy themselves. So if you want to be somebody's true partner in the enterprise world, you've got to make sure that they see your vision, and you got to make sure that your vision aligns with their view of the world. And there will always be some people who will not align with your view of the world, and that's fine. You only need 50% market share to win.
Yeah, it's interesting. You should say that, originally we said, hey, we can build container security and build that. And a lot of companies actually think like that, right? Like we can build our way out of transformation. As a matter of fact, like before you joined Palo Alto, obviously it acquired companies, but in a very cautious manner. What's the thinking behind build versus buy?
Well, I think there are multiple considerations, right? Obviously, the number one consideration is what your customers need something you can provide today?
Yeah.
Is there somebody else providing it better than you can? Will you be able to catch up and be able to do a better job than them? If not, you're better off acquiring them if it fits in your portfolio, right? So take cloud security, for example. We saw it was early days. We didn't have as good a cloud security platform as obviously RedLock did. We acquired it and we ingested it and integrated it. Now, so you do that by making sure that's a strategy that you believe is right for the long term. So we acquired that. We acquired RedLock, we acquired TrustLock, we acquired a series of companies in the cloud ecosystem. But once you get to a certain point, realize integration costs a lot more than build.
Mm.
And at that point, at that inflection point, which is where we reached on Prisma Cloud, as you know, we started innovating faster internally and built the next 4 modules ourselves, because we said the cost of integrate is too high, is better off to build, and we have enough best of breed first products in the platform that our customers will wait for us to do that integrated innovation, which they were not willing to wait in the first instance. So I think you've got to strike the balance, and it's category dependent. There are some areas where we decided not to play as a company because we didn't believe that we could add any more incremental value to what the best player in the industry out there was providing, and it was a price we couldn't afford. So it's really topic specific, but there are some fundamental principles. I think first in the market, trade at a premium to second for a reason, because they're first. And if you buy second, then you end up being second, and the probability that you screw it up is higher, and give you the wide, even the gap widens between the first and second because they're busy integrating with you while the first one gets a clear run. So I think your best opportunities in life are to go buy the best product out there in the market and find a way to scale it, not try and cost optimize to number 2 and number 3, which usually means you don't have strong enough belief in that segment, because if you believe in something, it should be a 10x, as we said earlier. If it's not, if you have to pay 2x or a 10x, how does it matter?
I've also heard through the grapevine that you negotiate a lot of deals yourself, don't hire a lot of bankers. For the entrepreneurs listening out there, can you share some of your secrets if you want to get acquired for top dollar?
Well, I'll tell you what, it sounds more dire than it is. The reason I prefer to have the conversations with myself is you are not making an acquisition. If you do it right, you're welcoming somebody to your team and your family. And you don't need interlopers to act on your behalf who are transactional in nature sometimes to try and create the right bond and the right understanding. I think a lot of the early discussions we have with companies set the bar in terms of what our expectations are and what their expectations are. So I have the conversation directly with founding teams, or many of us have the conversations directly with founding teams, but we want to make sure they understand who we are. We want them to come in with their eyes wide open. This is the beginning of a journey for the team and the end of the journey for the investors. Very often what bankers do is they maximize the outcome for the investors, and perhaps they're not as vested in the outcome for the team. So all I will say is that for the most part, for the 11 companies required, my focus is to make sure we pay investors fairly for their investment in the company, and we incentivize the teams to work at Palo Alto Networks for the next 2 to 3 years with giving them the right environment, the right strategy, the right partnership, and creating the right incentive structure. So a lot of those negotiations are to try and balance the investor interest with the team interest, and it's very hard to do that if you have a third party negotiating on your behalf. And yes, those discussions do get interesting, if that's what you're implying.
So Nikesh, just last question. Last year has been very sobering for all of us. Having said that, hope is eternal. What is the single most thing you are most excited about the future?
Look, Neelima, professionally, I'm excited about the fact that the rate of adoption of technology, the rate of disruption has actually gone up and not down in the last 1 year, because every company has had to stand on its head. Every other thing has shut down. The focus on technology has been tremendous, which has forced management teams, CEOs, leaders, people to go deploy technology faster, because that's become the underpinning. That's how we get groceries. That's how we get food delivered. That's how my kids' school communicates. That's how their calendar is set up. That's how we do vaccination. So literally anybody who needed to deploy technology has been forced to deploy touchless technology and faster technology in the last 1 year. So I think professionally it's very exciting, because the adaptation, which could have taken 3 to 5 years, has happened in the span of 12 months. So that's exciting, because it's going to mean lots of fun for all of us in the technology world. I think on a professional basis, as I said, it has made my relationships more meaningful. I cherish the time with my family a lot more, where I'd be traveling at a drop of a hat. Now, when my son says to me, "Are you going to the office and then you're not coming back? You're going to dinner?" Oh my God. Now, 2 years ago, that would have been a different conversation. Today, I feel his pain, because I've spent the last year over here and he's 6 years old. So, as I said, if I want to go meet a customer, I actually want to have a meaningful conversation. All the frivolous interactions have vanished from my life, right? I'm not going to arbitrary places. And, I was joking with somebody the other day, like, it'll be a long time before I go to a 10,000 people user conference in Vegas, because that just does not make it to my top 10 human interaction desires for the next year. So I think relationships become more meaningful, interactions will become more meaningful, and professionally, it's a phenomenal time to be in technology. So I think that's the part I'm most hopeful for. And I hope that, since we're at TiEcon, I hope that the current crisis that is going on in India goes away soon. My entire family has been has had COVID. My mother's in the hospital 2 days ago. So I know many of our fellow TiEcon members are experiencing similar situations, either if they're here or in India. And I wish them and their families the best. And I hope that we can get out of this crisis soon. And I hope that we all do our part in trying to support various efforts in the country.
Thank you, Nikesh. It was a real pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you for taking your time, and we look forward to speaking with you again for our next product review.
Thank you. I look forward to it. Thanks, Ankur.
Thank you, Nikesh. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you, Nikesh and team, for such a wonderful conversation.